to touch and inspire and change your lives. Tragically, in the life of the church, the Bible has become captive very often to theologians. And that was true in the Middle Ages. Who could, did the people have the Bible? They couldn't read it. It was in Latin or Greek, mostly perhaps in Latin. Did the people have the Bible in Germany? What did Martin Luther do? He translated the Bible into the German language of the people, so the people could use this Bible and it could speak to their hearts. I will never forget, I had 3 young men who went into the ministry where I was pastor in St. Cloud. Kent Brophy was one. Another one is heading up the Alpha Ministries in the state of Minnesota and was a pastor at Calvary Lutheran Church. And another one is down in southern Minnesota. All extraordinary pastors of whom I'm very proud. But I remember one who came to me after he'd gone to college, and he said, you know, I can't understand this stuff. I just can't grasp it. I don't know if I believe in God anymore, because he had a professor who was telling him how in effect, shorthand, how bogus the resurrection was. Fortunately, I had read the books that he came to talk to me about. And I said to him, I said, look, now if it is the case that you have to know Hebrew, that you have to know Greek, that you have to know Latin, that you have to know German, and you have to know French. I've studied all of those languages. I am far better off than you're going to be, and you're ever going to be, if that guy expects you to know all of this stuff and your belief in the resurrection is going to depend on it, you're out of luck. And so is about everybody in the church, out of luck. And your mom and dad who are in the parish are out of luck. You better stop to think again as to how faith is formed and how you come to believe in God. This man went on to be an extraordinary pastor because he got past that kind of education in the Bible. The Bible is reliable. It is open and accessible to ordinary and regular people. The tragedy is it doesn't get good. People can use it. How many of you know who Hans Nielsen Hauge was? Okay, yeah, as I remember, it was in 1895 that he was converted. And it was about in 1795. And about in 1804 that he was thrown in prison. Now Hauge was a little trouble for the pietists because he chewed tobacco. But what else did he do? Why was he thrown in jail? Who knows? He was thrown in jail for being a lay preacher and for writing pamphlets and tracts. Now where do you think the captivity of the Bible was captive to a bunch of preachers? And you know what they started to preach in Hans Nielsen Hauge's day? How many of you are Norwegians? Got some Norwegian blood at least. Do you know what they were preaching from the pulpits? And when Hans Nielsen Hauge, that's blinding. When Hans Nielsen Hauge was around, they didn't have a gospel of salvation through Jesus Christ. So what did they do? They started preaching. They didn't believe that stuff. They started preaching about how to raise better apples, how to have better potatoes.
That's not right.
What? Well, no, but that's what they were doing. I thought you meant you were questioning whether I knew my history. Okay. And that was going on in Denmark, Sweden, Norway, and Germany as well, under the influence of something called the Enlightenment. The Enlightenment is alive and well. It captured Thomas Jefferson. It captures guys like Marcus Borg. It captures Jesus Seminar people, and people believe this stuff. And the poor dumb fools, of course, are taught at Lutheran Bible Institute. You know, guys like John Brown, they did pretty well. You catch my irony, my hand. Hans Nielsen Hauge was doing what he ought to have done as a layperson. He was also an astute Christian. What I'm saying is that the Lutheran Bible Institute did what ought to be done in the church today and ought to be done in the church all through the ages, is to be treated as a trustworthy book put in your hands put in my hands as a reliable source of intimacy and contact with God. It is how God is going to reach us. So this matter of the Bible is a huge issue. The issue is going on today, left and right. And by the way, how many Lutherans do you think are in the world today? Anybody got a good idea?
50 million.
50 million? Who will go 60? Anybody willing to go to 60? Give me 60. Well, you won't give me 60. How about 55? There are about 75 million Lutherans in the world today. How many Anglicans in the world today? About the same. Now, when did we start? Halloween of 1517. And we've been able to reach the big number of 75 million. And that includes, you know, in Sweden until probably 10 or 12 years ago, you could be an absolute atheist and be head of the church council. Because everybody whose mother was in the church, they could be in the church even without baptism. And you could be president of the local church council. I'm not sucking this out of my thumb. That accounts those kinds of people. 75 million. How many Pentecostals are there in the world, do you think?
I don't know. I go to Central.
Yeah, well, that's one of the Pentecostals.
Yeah.
Okay, how many do you think? They started in 1906. Give me a guess. How many would go for 75 million? Boy, you're. How many would go for 200 million? You would? How would you go for 3? How about anybody go for 4? Well, as best I can figure out, on the basis of a scholar from Harvard who was no friend of the Pentecostals, who wrote a book in 1994 called Fire from Heaven. At that time, he said there were 400 million Pentecostals, and they were growing at the rate of 20 million a year, so it would give you 700 million Pentecostals in the world today. I have said to people in the Lutheran Church, when you sponsor a conference that will ask this question, what is it that is wrong with us Lutherans in terms of our theology or our practice, so that we have never been able to get beyond 75 million, I want to come to it. Will we ever face that kind of question? You know how many church members there are in the Evangelical Lutheran Church of Tanzania, on whom the Lutheran Bible Institute of Minneapolis, Seattle, and elsewhere have had a great effect? 5 million members. More than in the ELCA. How many in the Ethiopian church? 5 million. And they grow. I was there to visit their Bible schools in 1985. It's because they actually believe what the founders of the Lutheran Bible Institute movement believe. And they do evangelism. They have children, but in addition to growing by birth in the northern diocese, when I was there, they would grow by another 3% during the year. And they are keeping the faith. How many have ever, do you know, heard of a book called The Next Christendom by Philip Jenkins? Read it. And you will find out that the church is not folding. The church is not being overwhelmed. The church is growing. Jesus Christ is Lord of not North America, but the world. And the church is growing in Africa, in South America, Southeast Asia, enormously. That doesn't mean that we are growing. But let me tell you, God is up to wonderful and great things. What was one of the great things that I learned at LBI that I hope I've never lost in my life? Is that the matter of bearing witness for the salvation of people is the path not just of clergy or the parish workers that they turned out. It's the challenge for everybody to be a disciple. And the Bible was taught to be a book to create disciples. Today that's very much under attack in much of the church. And there is a doctrine that one would describe as universalism, saying that it doesn't matter that whether you believe or not, because God is gracious and good and you're all going to be saved. You know, and I could point to you chapter and verse about that stuff. Lutheran Bible Institute had it right about a lot of stuff that the church doesn't have it right about today. And we give thanks to God for that heritage. So we had it right, that the Bible is a center. Prayer and devotional life are necessary. And what about the fellowship of great friends that you learned about at Lutheran Bible Institute? Friends for life. My wife and I, we met because of LBI. I was tending the booth at the youth convention of the ALC at Concordia College in Moorhead, and I was tending the booth, and along came this wonderful woman from Oregon, and she was going to Seattle LBI, and we got visiting, you know, and I didn't even get her name, didn't find out where she was living. It took me about 2 hours of detective work to find out who she was and where she was. And so I found out, and I, you know, a date in those days, a date meant you went together to a Bible study. And so we went together to a Bible study, and you know, and I remember I may have bumped her hand. You know, there was a lot of distance between holding hands and bed sheets in those days. We were engaged 3 years, and you know why this congregation has been so successful? She was the second parish worker here from 1954 to 56, and we were married here. There you go. That'll help you. This gift of friendship ought never to be taken lightly. And then, where did I get a vision about the world? I've traveled a lot in the world, lived in Germany, used to do ministry in East Germany. I am not a friend of communism. I'm not a friend of anything that floats in the name of socialism. I saw what it does to people and how it destroys them. But where did I get a vision of the world? Out in North Dakota, I had been to Washington, D.C. I had been at the White House, actually. You know, and I had been to a Yankees game and saw Joe DiMaggio hit 2 home runs. Now that's worth a lot. But, you know, I had never seen a black man until I rode on the train going from Bismarck to Chicago and then on to Washington, D.C. But how did I get a vision of the world? Through LBI. Because Stefano Moshe, the first president of the Evangelical Lutheran Church of Tanzania, was a student there. And I met all kinds of people that were on their way to mission field. I had won 2 watches through a speaking contest in 4-H and FFA, and so when I had 2 watches, I thought I should give one away, and I gave one to Jethro Sanaga, who was a pastor from Sumatra. And because he had been a Muslim and became a Christian, the Muslims were seeking to kill him, and they were seeking to kill him, and the Dutch were seeking to kill him because he participated in the revolution against the Dutch. And here he was, a pastor of the Batak Church. And I could go on and talk about how the world opened up. I eventually did my doctoral dissertation on Roman Catholic stuff, on one of the men who is now the head of the whole ecumenical affairs for Rome. I was the first one to run a dissertation on him as far as I can tell. He was only about 35. I met him in Germany. And how did I catch any concern about an ecumenical vision? It was because this was fostered at Lutheran Bible Institute. Because people had a relationship to Jesus Christ, and they thought that was good enough if you found that in other people. You know, I'd go down to the laundry place, and the guy that worked in the laundry was going to Northwestern Baptist School. I even found out those Baptists were Christians.